Okay, New Mexico, it's the big bright idea. Now, if you've been watching the show, you know we don't take ourselves too seriously.
No.
We take it light. We enjoy sports. It's something that we like to look at. But the big bright idea question now is, how do sports impact society, or does society impact sports? Is this some type of symbiotic relationship? Case in point, last week, head coach of the Baylor football program, Art Briles, was fired after reports of sexual assault, sexual abuse, and violence by the players that went unchecked and undisciplined, not only by head coach Art Briles, but the AD, and it seemed like the entire program. The president, Ken Lay, was removed from his position. Art Briles was fired, and just this morning it was reported that athletic director Ian McCaw has stepped down from his position. And normally in sports, in college sports, we've heard of many instances and occurrences of sexual assault and sexual abuse done by players. Sometimes that individual player is punished, but never has it come down against a program. We saw it a few years ago at Penn State with Jerry Sandusky and the late Joe Paterno when he left. And what's coming out now are reports of over 20 years of instances of abuse done by Sandusky, where coaches knew, reported it back to Paterno, he said nothing, and then the NCAA came down, got rid of Paterno, and came down with sanctions and fines against the Penn State University program. But we also have other instances of sports really impacting society. Last year, the Missouri football players protested and said they were not going to play a game as long as the president of Missouri at the time remained in their position due to a lot of unrest. There were claims of racial discrimination that were happening across campus, and the football players wanted to band with their fellow students to really try to fight this issue. We have Michael Sam and Jason Collins. Michael Sam, formerly of the Missouri football program and attempted in the NFL and the CFL. Jason Collins, former NBA player. They both came out as gay. Michael Sam before the season was over, before he really entered the draft. Jason Collins after he retired. Possibly that will prompt other players to do the same. So my question is, really, how do sports impact society in how we think about some of these large issues that we seem, as a society as a whole, seem to be so separate on?
You know, coincidentally, I did an entire senior thesis for my college degree, one of my communications classes, that it took me over 2 years to write this paper, but I talked about how sports and society intertwine so much, and how the celebrityism of these well-known coaches, well-known athletes gets to their head, and they believe that they're above it all. They don't see the consequences of their actions immediately, and when they do see them, usually society doesn't even get wind of it for years because it's such a private institution. And when you're that high of a celebrity, when you have that much standing, it's really difficult to even relate at all as just a general person in the general public to be able to say. But you know, when Michael Sam came out as gay, I think it opened a lot of doors for people who were in athletics in general and were gay or were transgendered or whatever. They started to see it was becoming a little bit more acceptable, and he did suffer a lot of hatred on some people's parts, fans. I'm sure coaches and other people had things to say, but I think that was a really great move on his part. He may not have known it at the time, but I think it made a huge impact.
Mm-hmm. You know, what I'd like to throw in is, lately we've been seeing a lot of the domestic violence and sexual abuse cases getting a lot more light than they have in the past. I think that's great. We all need to be held to a certain standard, whether you make $20 million a year or you make $12,000 a year. Everybody must be held accountable for their actions, and especially those guys that are up in those professional leagues. Guys like Greg Hardy, those kind of guys, the repeat offenders that they just don't learn. I mean, I know there's some in the MLB as well, Jose Reyes being one of them from the Rockies. These guys they've been suspended for lengthy amount of times. They've lost significant amounts of money, which I think is right. It's fair. We're all humans, and as I said, we all need to be held to this standard. So I do like that it is seen more light here recently. Whether that's good or bad, that's up for debate. But I think in the long run, this is best for sports.
I think it's best for sports and best for the country, because one thing that occurs after every weekend is what we're doing here on this show for the past few months, ladies and gentlemen, is telling you about sports, telling you about the things that take place. You're going to go to the water cooler. Did you see the game last night? Oh, yeah, I saw the game. My team is going to win. My fantasy football team is going to win. It is something that drives relationships, which drives this country. However, we have these instances occur. Like you said, it should be fair. The same standard should be held for a person who makes $20 million a year compared to the person who makes $12,000 a year. But I ask you this, if it came out that one of us had an egregious violation of society and social morals, would we be back on this show right here? No. But these guys, these athletes continue to get more and more chances just because they are a good pass rusher. Yes, Greg Hardy recently came out and said that, hey, I'm going to counseling, I'm trying to correct some of the things that I've done. But you know someone, he might not be ready to play in the league again as far as his actions and how he feels and what he's done, his violations to women. However, the fact that he is an above average pass rusher, come July in training camp, somebody's going to give him a call to get the job.
And you know where it actually starts, guys. This starts in high school. When the kids are star athletes, I mean, we see it all the time. You know, the star athlete maybe doesn't do his homework or gets in trouble with the teacher, yet he's still allowed to go out and play on Friday night. And he's still allowed to go out there and get the spotlight. I think that's the root of the problem. We have to nip it in the butt with the kids starting in high school, even grade school. I mean, middle school. You know?
It's true. But you mentioned that, Kimberly, the love of celebrity that we have. Look, we know very well in America the best thing to be are rich, famous, and young. That's what we push all the time here in this country. Is that really giving any of us a realistic view as to how life is?
No, and to kind of touch on what Tyler said, you know, when I was in high school, we had all-star wrestling team who had won state championships year after year after year. We had a coach who was known for being strict and hard on his players. The football team, we had this girl in high school who sent out a nude picture of herself, and everybody throughout the entire school had it. The only kids who were punished for it were not involved in athletics. And some of those kids were, you know, freshmen who just made the football team, who just made the baseball team. There was even some softball players who got kicked off because they helped spread the image. We're not seeing the all-star guys get in as much trouble for it, or maybe we're just not seeing it. It might happen behind closed doors, or they might get, you know, a lecture or a talking to. Greg Hardy, good for him for going to therapy. It's something Tyler and I bickered about on the Cowboys show. That got into a really heated debate because just because he's good at football doesn't make him better than the average Joe. And these situations do need to come to light. We do need to be able to talk about them. They're uncomfortable, and they do make a difference in general society, especially for young kids. They see this guy go right back out onto the football field 4 or 5 weeks later, and he's still playing because he's good at what he does. It doesn't matter what he did. Smack him on the wrist and send him back out. That team needs the money. They need the wins. Sometimes it's just not worth it.
It's definitely not worth it. And the thing we have to understand is that society is full of people. Well, sports are played by people. Yes. People who go through all different things. We come from all sorts of backgrounds, have all sorts of experiences. And if we're going to hold each one of us as quote unquote citizens accountable, we're going to have to hold our athletes and those who are in charge of them accountable as well. My hat's off to you, Baylor University. Possibly other universities, schools, and professional leagues will follow this lead. All right, that's it for the Youth Sports Report on this Tuesday. We made it, guys. We want to see you on Thursday. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.